Good evening and happy Wednesday evening. Welcome to our third month of Women Who Win 2020. It's amazing to think that we are halfway through the program. We've already talked about vision, mission, purpose, goal setting, as well as going through and talking about the savvy business strategies. So now we turn our focus to building your brand. So my name is Cassandra Willard. I am honored to serve as president of our Now the Orlando chapter, as well as co-chair for Women Who Win. And I am thrilled to be able to introduce Elizabeth Roney, who is my co-chair for Women Who Win this year, as well as our communications director, to go ahead and intro our speakers. So thanks so much to everyone, and I hope you enjoy this session.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for another amazing week of Women Who Win. Tonight, we have the amazing Yamina Marlowe and the fabulous Maria Ferguson here with us tonight, who are going to be speaking. I would like to start off by having both of these wonderful women introduce themselves for us. Let's start with Yamina and then go to Maria.
Thanks, Liz. Hi, ladies. First of all, I'm such an honor to be here tonight and share with you guys a little bit of my experience and just what I know about building a brand. My name is Yamina Marlowe. I work at Full Sail University. I'm the Strategic Partnerships Manager, and I've been at Full Sail for almost 15 years. My background is in design. So I've been practicing, I'm a graphic designer, been doing it for over 20 years. And at Full Sail, I've done several things. I've done curriculum development. I've taught in logos and symbols and digital art and design. And I was an art director for Full Sail Labs. And yeah, and now I'm here. So I'm excited to share with you guys.
Okay. Hello, everyone. My name's Maria Ferguson, and I'm the department chair for the Digital Marketing Master's Program here at Full Sail. I've been at Full Sail for about 10 years. I also teach the Digital Marketing Fundamentals class, and I have over 30 years of marketing experience, but I rather than refer to myself as a marketer, I like to call myself a business storyteller. So that's basically what we're going to talk about tonight. So Yamina, you want to get started? So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to start us off by discussing the fundamentals of building your brand. And Yamina, she's going to continue by sharing real life examples of specific brand elements and how they were conceived and how they were developed. Okay, so let's start out with what is a brand. I'm not going to spend a lot of time with this because I know you've heard all these different definitions of a brand, but I'd like to say that all of them are right. You know, the brand does consist of the logo, the name, the symbols, and all of that good. All of those things, the personality, but it's not just those things. It's a lot more. And so what I want to talk about, I'm going to be talking about is all of those other elements that come together to form the brand. I actually came up with my own definition of a brand that I'll share with you. I basically refer to it as a cohesive entity that made up of that consists of distinct characteristics, and they all come together to tell a complete story. Okay, so tonight we're going to talk about some of those elements, but I would like to say something before we move on. The things that we discuss tonight for your product or your company or your business brand are also applicable to your personal brand. So keep that in mind, and I'll probably go back and forth with some of my examples, but keep that in mind as well as we move forward. For example, my name's Maria Ferguson, and I am a brand, but you don't know a lot about me right now, except what I've told you and just, my personal appearance. But there are a lot of layers to me. I have a personality. I have a background. You really don't know me unless you know my experiences. So just as I have lots of layers, your brand has lots of layers, and that's what we're going to be talking about tonight. And each brand has a story, and that story is made up of many different elements. There are some brands that, excite me and, make me want to purchase them. And there are other brands I don't care so much for. Some brands I don't know much about simply because I stop at the packaging. For example, if it's something edible, I would look at it, it doesn't look appetizing, or, the visual is not appealing. That's as far as I get. But there are other brands that actually motivate me to go further. And there's some brands I'm just indifferent about. I don't care. So that leads me to the next point. The most important thing that you need to know about a brand is that great brands evoke emotion. And that is very, very important. If I'm indifferent, that doesn't do you any good. Okay. If I don't like it, that's really bad. So how do we evoke emotion? We do that through what we call the brand story. Okay. Now the brand story is more than a narrative, but it does include a narrative. And what the brand story tells us is it tells us who you are, what you do, and why you do it. All are very, very important because everything involved in the brand story will help your consumers connect to your product. Now, believe it or not, there's an organization that actually proved that the story can improve your product 20 times over. And what they did, this experiment was scientific. What they did is it's called, they had a name for it. It was called significant objects. So what they did, the researchers actually bought a number of products from a thrift store, rather, a rubber duck or some really insignificant items for as little as $1.25. Then they gathered together a number of writers. They wrote short stories about each one of the items. And then they placed all of these items on eBay and auctioned them off along with their story. And so those items that cost maybe $1, a little over $1, they sold for as much as $8,000, some of them. And it was because of the story. And that's just to prove how significant your story is and what a difference it makes. I have another little example to share with you, and this one's personal. My daughter actually won a car, and this car is a 1987 Cadillac Alante, mint condition, beautiful silver convertible with red interior, beautiful car. But it's an antique, and she's less than 30. She's in her late 20s. So someone hit her car. It was parked in the parking garage. And to repair the car was very complicated because it is an antique. So I tried to help her, even though the insurance was paying for it. A lot of auto body shops didn't want to touch it. So I talked to this one auto body shop in Orlando Auto Body, and I got this guy named Brad. And Brad said, where did she get this car? Because, here's this young lady, less than 30, and she has this antique car. He said, where did she get this car? So I told her story, how she won the car. And he said to me, I don't usually work on late model cars. He said, but I like her story and I'll do it. And so he had to call around and find the parts, and he did a lot, but he connected with her story and he was very happy to help. And we just knew we were in good hands because of the connection, because of her story. So don't underestimate the value of a good story. Okay, so now I'd like to share with you some steps that will help you build your brand. The first thing you want to do, as we just talked about, is you want to create a narrative. You want to tell that story. Of course, you need to write it down. You need to talk about the who, which is easy. You need to talk about what you do. But the why is the challenging part. You really need to think about, why does this matter to anyone? Why should you buy my product? Because that needs to be a part of your narrative. The next thing you need to do, you need to determine who will align with this story. That's when you select your target audience. And that's probably, I think that's something that you guys have talked about a little bit. But the target audience, some people are a little reluctant to target an audience. I tell my students that targeting an audience doesn't mean that you're excluding anyone. For example, if I owned a boutique for young women 18 to 25, it doesn't mean that a woman 50 or 60 can't shop there. It just means that my resources will be allocated towards those who are most likely to purchase my product. So that's very important, that you take the time to figure out exactly who you're targeting, because the next step after you determine your target market, then you further develop the story, and that's where the messaging, the logo, the packaging, and all of that, all the other things that help you tell that story, because you have a narrative now. But now that you know who it is, that logo, and this is something Yamina is going to talk to you a little bit more about, but that logo, those all of those characteristics have to tell the same story. They have to align, and that's extremely important. So then once you further develop the story with your logo and your packaging, and etc., you want to communicate the story to that target audience. And that's important, because now you have to decide, do I use traditional media? Do I use digital media? What platforms do I use? Or do I use email, or do I use social media? And keep in mind that every platform is not the best way to reach every audience. TikTok is not best for, it's not the best way to reach everyone. Twitter isn't. So you need to know who your audience is, and what spaces do they spend their time in, which will allow you to reach them there where they are. So that's very important. It's learning where to communicate, or how to communicate to that target audience. And then the last thing I'd like to mention is that with building your brand, you need to revisit your story. I think that's a problem that a lot of companies make. A lot of them fail because they don't revisit the story. They forget. They start growing, and they start evolving into something else, and then they lose those that are loyal to them, because somehow the story, they got away from the origin. They got away from the reason, the why. Why did your company matter to me? That's why I was there. But they get caught up. So I would definitely say, revisit your story every now and then, and make sure you're still aligned. Now, there's some companies who deliberately say that story's not working. We need to regroup, revamp, and do things totally different. But if it's working for you, test it out every now and then. Make sure that you're still aligned with them. Okay, so let's talk now a little bit about some elements that will help you build that connection, okay? Let's start with values. Your values, what's important to you. This is one way to connect with your customers, because there's some people like doing business with like-minded companies. Now, I'll use my son as an example here. My son is 30. My son shops online, period. Very seldom will he go into a store, because he does most of his shopping online. But he will not shop from a business that does not align with his core values. So if their practices are not ethical, he's not going to shop with them. And there are a lot of people like that. They look for companies that do align with their core values. So if actually your core values might be something that helps differentiate you from others. And we'll talk about that in a second. So if your core values are very important to you and worthy of mentioning, put them up front. Make sure they're seen on your website, a part of your mission statement or your vision statement, because that could help with that connection. And I'll give you an example of that later on, but that can help you make that emotional connection that we're looking for here, is just by aligning with allowing them to align with your core values. The second thing I'd like to mention is your visual identity. That's very, very important. We're talking about the logo now, the font, the colors. As I said, everything is has to be cohesive here. Everything's telling one story. But these things all help. You know, do I get excited when I see the colors? Does it make me want to buy your product? All those things matter. But they also matter, as I said, I'm going to go back and forth from that personal brand. They also matter with your personal brand. The visual identity matters. And I'll give you an example. Back many, many years ago, I applied for an internship with IBM. This was back in the early 80s. It was a summer internship. It was the summer before my senior year. And I applied for them. And of course, they had my application, they had my resume, and they saw that I was majoring in marketing, and I had a minor in computer science, and I had some experience working for Hewlett Packard, and they had part of the story. But when they called me in for an interview, I knew I needed to give them the rest of the story. So I did my research, and back then, everything's changed now, but back then, IBM was extremely conservative, and everyone knew that you had to wear dark suits, white shirts, and leather shoes. So I didn't have any suits in my closet, but I did take a little time, and I went out and take my little money, and I went to a store called Casual Corner. Casual Corner targeted professional women. Their prices were a little higher than what I could afford, but they had great sales. So I was able to buy a suit. My suit was navy blue. It was a wool blend, and it had tiny little pinstripes in it. Screamed IBM. And then I bought an Oxford shirt. I actually bought a pink one too, because this became my interview uniform, basically. But so I bought that, and then I added one more thing to this ensemble. I added a pair of pumps. These pumps were not just any pumps. These were power pumps. These pumps were by a designer that was very, very popular back then. The name was Anye. Some people said Agner, but these are the dark burgundy, or they were the antique red shoe that had the little A on it for Anye. And I bought those. I found those on sale, and I felt really, really good. Long story short, I went to the interview, and I felt like I completed the story, and I said, I fit in here, and I'm the complete package. I'm everything you need. I actually got the position. And the funniest thing about this story is that my boss, who was about a big guy, like 6'7" or so, he said a couple of times, not in an inappropriate way, he said, "Nice suit. Nice suit." He said that like twice when I wore the suit. And one day he came in wearing a suit exactly like mine. It was so I didn't know if maybe he liked my suit because he had one like it, or maybe he went out and bought a suit like mine because he liked it so much. But I knew I had nailed it. I figured them out. I did my research, and I gave them the entire package. And that's what I'm saying. We have to look at ourselves as a brand. We have to look at every aspect of ourselves to be able to promote that brand. And that's what I did that day. And I think I did a pretty good job. So the next thing I'd like to mention is the differentiator. We need to set ourselves apart from others. And I won't spend much time with that. We can just use the example of the ethical business. If you're, if you adhere to sustainable How about that? You're sustainable, you adhere to sustainable business practices. If that's important to you, that needs to be out there front and center, because other people are looking for sustainable businesses. That sets you apart. I heard someone say, be fanatical about something. So find something and be fanatical about it. Put it out there, but be consistent as well. Commit to it. You can't go back and forth because that will just destroy your brand. So be fanatical, but commit to it. And then the next thing that is important for that emotional connection is the messaging. The key messages in your tagline or your copy or even your brand promise. Now, this is important because the promise is basically what you're telling the consumer that they can expect to receive, whether it's something tangible or intangible. It might just be an experience. And I'll use Disney as an example. Disney promises you a magical experience. So, and their tagline is where dreams come true. So the expectation is that I will have a magical experience, whether I'm visiting the theme parks or I'm on a cruise, I will have a magical experience. And that's great, but that is a promise. So whatever you promise, make sure you keep your promise, because people have expectations and that can hurt your brand if you're promising something and you're not delivering. Let's see. Okay. Oh, and the last thing I'd like to mention is the personality. The personality, yes, brands have personalities. And my favorite example of a brand with a personality is Dove Skincare. I think they've done a little revamping on that. And right now they promote themselves to women. And if you look at their advertisements, they try to relate to women of all ages, ethnicities, shapes, sizes across the world. And their brand personality has been described as being relatable, simple, non-judgmental, and elegant. So to me, that sounds like that friend we all wish we had, that, you know, this friend is there for us and they care about us and they're not going to judge us. So that's who Dove is trying to be for the women around the world. So that's their personality. So keep that in mind, that you need to know what personality your brand has, because that personality has to be consistent through every one of these elements and beyond, because everything has to tell a cohesive story. So to end my portion, I'd like to talk just briefly about 3 companies that kind of these particular companies caught my attention. I'm going to start with Nike. I'm not going to talk about the swoosh because everybody talks about the swoosh. I'm not going to talk about the tagline, you know, just do it. We've all heard about that. I'd like to talk about their website, because I personally connect with Nike, with Nike's website. I love their website. I'll say former runner. I used to run, but when I go to this site, one thing I like about it is clean, lots of white space, it's very organized. So it's very simple. You don't have to do a lot to get to where you want, to find the product you want. But I like the images they use. They use athletes and non-athletes, which is nice. They use people of different sizes, different, just a variety, a very diverse group of people. And these images they just make me want to go do something. So I don't know if it works for you, but I connect. So I really like their website. And the next one is Starbucks. Now, I'm not a coffee drinker, so I don't connect with the brand the way some people do because they love coffee. I go there every now and then to get chai tea, but I was really curious about the Starbucks brand because I always wondered, why do they have a mermaid? And where did the name Starbucks come from? But it wasn't until I read their story that I fully got the concept behind this company. 2 things I learned. One is that the owners or the founders, these people were, I think it was 3 of them. 2 of them were teachers and 1 was a writer, okay? And so the name Starbucks comes from a book. the book about a whale, Moby Dick. And so I said, okay, that makes sense. And Starbucks is a character in the book. But then everything came together even better when I learned that they were located, their original location was at the Pike Place Market in Seattle, Washington. If you're familiar with Pike Place, you'll know that this is a fish market where they actually toss fish around and people go there to see them. Now, so I thought to myself, okay, now the nautical theme makes sense. They were at a fish market. But even more than that, Pike Place, I will say this, whether Starbucks knows it or not, either consciously or subconsciously, I think Starbucks learned how to create an experience around a product from Pike Place, because Pike Place turned a stinky fish market into a tourist destination. So that's huge. That's quite a skill. And I think they learned that from them by being there. The last one I want to mention is Warby Parker, their eyeglasses. And this one caught my attention because their story is really good. They're a few college guys. They went on a backpacking trip. One broke his eyeglasses and couldn't afford to get them replaced. So he had to go through the entire semester squinting. Because he couldn't find a pair of affordable glasses. So that motivated them to create not only affordable glasses, but accessible glasses. And so they have that social impact that compels me to want to purchase from them, because they give a pair of glasses to someone who doesn't have glasses whenever I buy from them. So that's a great brand story, and it really touches my heart. So I hope that you guys can see how it's all threaded, that brand story. Everything is threaded into that brand story, and there should be consistency there. So I'm now going to turn everything over to Yamina, and she's going to share some things with you as well.
Oh, thank you, Maria. So I think I'm going to share a little story before I get into my experience in building a brand. And it kind of ties in, but it also, your story about your interview reminded me of my first interview at Full Sail. And when I graduated from college as a graphic designer back in the day, 1998, we didn't have the internet. So we had to carry around a portfolio case and present all of our stuff every time we went to an interview. The typical thing was to have that black zipper portfolio thing. And I wanted something that was really unique, because that's how I wanted to sell myself when I went to an interview. So I found this wooden portfolio case that was super, super cool. And I felt so good in it. Well, had an interview at Full Sail. I interviewed with some of you guys, if you work at Full Sail, you'll know Luis Garcia. So I interviewed with Luis, and we had this great conversation. He looks at my portfolio. He's like, oh, that's a cool portfolio case. Well, a week later, a few days later, he calls me, I get the job, and I start working at Full Sail. And then later, as I'm there working, I kept hearing people come to me and ask me about my portfolio case and how they really created an impression on Luis. And I'm like, oh my God, did I get hired just because I had a really cool
right?
There was I'm like, I think I'm going to keep this portfolio case. It's great. So
part of the brand.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, this works. So funny story is that Luis actually, and this is where I go into my presentation about brand building. Luis was my boss, and then he went off, did some really amazing things. I went into education, and then about 10 years into being at Full Sail, he calls me up one day and he's like, hey, so I have a project for you, a real interesting project for you, but I can't pay you. I'm like, oh, great. And I'm like, this guy knows that I can't tell him no, because he's such a cool guy. And he's like, yeah, let's come over and we'll talk about it. So I meet with him, and he starts talking about how he wanted to build this experience for kids and teens, and try to basically get the kids young before they're college age, and just get them interested in Full Sail. And that's the main thing. So he's like, okay, so we need to create this brand. And initially he thought about me for the logo, but before we got to anything that was visual, we had to start creating a story and come up with a mission statement and come up with keywords that were really, really important to us. So we spent like 3 weeks just writing down words of what was important to us as we started to develop this brand. We knew that I wanted it to be mostly for kids and teens. We wanted them to come in and have fun and engage and just kind of the sky's the limit type of thing. So as we went through all the words, then later we landed on these 4 keywords, which are fun, exploration, collaboration, and creativity. And those became our 4 pillars as we started building the brand. And after we had that, after we knew that that's what we wanted to go for, we were like, okay, well, what does this mean? Let's start building a logo. Let's start building a symbol for Full Sail Labs, for what this summer camp program is going to be. We want, we're like shooting for the sky. We're like, okay, well, if we want to shoot for the sky, we wanted to explore space, made the most sense. And also fit the theme of Full Sail, where it's kind of like aviation, sort of flying type of thing. So we started working on sketches, and this is where the fun part is, like sketch after sketch. And this is only like probably a third of, I couldn't find the rest of the sketches because this was like 6 years ago. So this is probably a third of the sketches that we went through and all the different iterations. And as you can see, there's some things that are really, really crazy, because we were like, okay, well, it's labs and exploration, experimentation, or do we? And then we started going through the aviation. Do we want it to look like a plane? Do we want it to look like a rocket? And eventually, we landed on what is now, well, actually, it's not this anymore because they took the symbol away. But this became my baby, along with Luis Garcia, and so we created this logo, which we thought was pretty amazing. So once we worked on the logo, we have an amazing designer at Full Sail that designs spaces, and we wanted the space to fit what we wanted for the kids. We wanted them to be in there and feel like they had space to explore, that they could work with each other. So you have desks that have multiple seats in them, so they can, and they're modular. So all of these desks moved around, and you could put them in a circle, or you could divide them up. But all the kids, they worked together. They all had a whiteboard, so they could all like jot down their ideas. They had, whenever they were on break, they had space. They had these awesome little chairs with like iPads, or if they were there for after school programs and their brother or sister, they weren't part of the lab, but they wanted to work on homework, there was space for that. There was a lounge for the parents, so the parents could to be there and watch their kids. So everything about this space was just spoke to the brand, and we wanted to make sure that it was true to what we wanted to communicate as what later became a summer camp and after school program for kids and teens. Interesting about this is that it started off with kids, and then teens, like, well, maybe there is a market for teens, and then we included teens for that. So once we had that set up, we had to decide how we wanted to communicate. We figured out that, or we thought that maybe if we created a mascot that could connect with the students. So we created Ryan, which is play on words for Orion, so we're still sticking with the space theme. And of course it is, I guess it has no gender. that's kind of what I wanted to say. So we have girls that connect and guys and boys that would connect. When it came to our visuals, we had, I'm showing an ad for, well, that's general for kids and teens. And then on the right side, one that's a 2019 summer camp for teenagers. We wanted to make sure that the students were always having fun and that they were using the equipment, because that they were actually doing something, that this wasn't a summer camp where the students were going to come in and just sit in front of the computer or just come in and have fun and then have nothing tangible to show. So we came up and so that, and I don't know if you've noticed that in this page there is a color palette. We started off with 2 blues and a gray, and then eventually we added a couple more colors. And those were the colors that we always used in our ads. And anytime that anybody wanted to add a black, like for example, we had I had a junior art director that insisted on putting a black background on our website. And to me, that was like a strike in the heart. I'm like, we don't have black in our color palette. We don't use black. We use a really dark gray or a really dark blue, and that's it. So I was very, very adamant about that. And I'm like super particular when it comes to respecting the brand and staying loyal to the brand and true to the brand, because that is how you build brand awareness and brand recognition. So it didn't take long before, it took maybe a year or 2 before parents and kids and teenagers, they recognized our logo whenever they would see it out and about, because we made sure that we stayed consistent with the brand. Same thing if you're flipping through an ad, for example, I love Target. Target is one of those brands that when I'm watching their commercial, before they show the logo at the end, I know it's a Target brand. I know it's a Target ad. They are so consistent with the way that they advertise. And that's what we wanted for Full Sail Labs. So, and then another piece of that was that we wanted to, Luis was really adamant about making cool summer camp shirts. So that's where we had to spend a little bit more on shirts, our budget going more towards really cool looking shirts, and then take out of something else. Like we would much rather have like a really cool looking shirt. So we went for the 4 or 5 years that I was there, we had different types of shirts. This is the last one from 2019. And because Armada had just opened up in at Full Sail University, we made it look like an esports type of jersey, and the kids really liked it. So it's like a really, really cool shirt. And we just wanted to make sure that the kids felt really good in it. And it was a happy moment. After the summer was over, I was at a soccer practice with a friend of mine, and her kid was playing, and then all of a sudden I look over, and there's a teenager, which was really impacting for me. A teenager was wearing his Full Sail Labs shirt while he was practicing soccer. And that just touched my heart. I'm like, oh my God, a teenager thinks this shirt is cool enough to wear outside of a summer camp. And that was just so important for us as we wanted to continue developing this. So I talked about the mission statement earlier, and I didn't mention it in the beginning because I wanted to kind of start wrapping up with this. So what we ended up with was transforming students from being content consumers to content creators. And that is what we always stood by. We wanted to make sure that our students were coming in to learn and not just be passive. So we wanted to give them knowledge. And I think that made parents really, really happy. We had an amazing Michelle Gaudet. Her curriculum was just, oh my gosh, so amazing. She's so talented, and she just made sure that these students wanted to come back. I mean, we had students that were repeats that would not just do just 1 week, that would do multiple weeks. And we had students that would come, then later tell their siblings, and they would want to come, or tell their friend that lived in California and they wanted to come here to come. I'm like boasting about Full Sail Labs, but it was just like, I think that is all. The reason I like to tell that story is not just like toot a horn, but also to just kind of show that if you stay true to your brand, and like Maria was saying earlier, if you continue to develop your story and don't forget your story, then you can create something that is really beautiful. And for me, when I finally had to leave Full Sail Labs, it was a very, very sad thing for me, because I feel like we had created something that was very special and that families really appreciated. So I have a couple more minutes, and I want to talk, that's the end of Full Sail Labs. That's my personal story. But I also want to talk about Goodr, because Goodr is like, if you don't know Goodr, you should go to their website. It's goodr.com, and they sell sunglasses. It's a brand that I really, really love, because it's so much fun, and their creative writers are just amazing. So if you look at their brand and what they stand for, is we started Goodr because we think running and working out is fun, and your gear should be too. At our core, we're all about creating fun, fashionable, and functional sunglasses that everyone can afford. Basically, we're recklessly committed to fun, blah, blah, blah sunglasses. And their mascot is Carl the flamingo. So you can see Carl is on the right side there. He's just kind of chilling. But when you look through their whole website, everything is very consistent. Their color palette is consistent. Their fonts are consistent. Carl is everywhere, even their emails. Their emails are from Carl and from the aviary. So, which is pretty funny. Like if you break your glasses and you send them an email, they'll send their glasses to the nursery and the aviary, and let the nurses there like take care of it. And then when they send you brand new glasses, mind you, they'll send you a brand new pair for free. Like I had an email and it started as like squawk, like what that means in bird talk is. So like even their writing is very consistent with their theme, and with Carl being their mascot. So this is just another example of everything's really bright and colorful and just like super fun. And if you go through there, and of course they don't hold back, like their BFGs is one of the types of glasses that are really big, and the names of their glasses are just a lot of fun. So I would just encourage you to go into that. And then, oh, by the way, I get nothing from advertising Goodr. I just want to make sure that you guys know that it's just a brand that I really, really appreciate. And that's all I have for today. We wanted to make sure to leave a few minutes for questions.
I just want to say, Yamina, I am just so happy to know you now. I saw all your great work. I never knew who was responsible for that.
Oh,
so
yeah.
you did an awesome job.
Yeah, the world of a graphic designer is very incognito, I guess.
Right? So I'm honored to know now the face behind all the work.
Aw, thanks.
So thank you both so much. I want to go ahead and open the floor and see if we have any questions tonight. Lots of great information, so many great brand examples. So I appreciate it. And I want to share one quick example. My picture is not up right now. It's actually just the logo for the Nowbo brand, because while we're waiting on a question, I want to just share a fun fact. Because if you look closely at the Nowbo logo, you may notice that the logo is actually two interlocking dollar signs. So when the logo was created almost 45 years ago, when the organization first launched, that was one of the big aspects. So when you look at our National Association of Women Business Owners, we're looking at really bringing together a collaboration and the economy and the community of female entrepreneurs. So one of the really strong points that they were looking to was to make sure that we looked at all of the different elements that would come together to build the economic aspect, since as members, as individuals in the business space, economy is always close to our hearts. So that is what that logo is. I know from time to time I always get asked what it is. So now you know a little bit about the backstory.
And now I will always see dollar signs. Before I didn't know, but now I see dollar signs.
It used to be a rosette. Thanks, Cassie.
I know, exactly. Now that you know, now you know.
Yeah.
Any questions from any of our attendees? I know we have a few that are with us tonight who are mobile. So if there are any questions, you can feel free to go ahead and chime in. I want to just express great thanks and gratitude, Maria and Yamina, both for sharing some of your experiences and some of your journey and really giving us great context, because our brand stories really are so many different moving pieces and parts. So I appreciate that. That's definitely a really great thing to be able to know and to hear how these different elements will come together. So not seeing any questions, I want to go ahead and really quickly share just a few quick pieces of information. So the first thing I want to share, because it's a good way to learn about more of Nowbo Orlando's brand story, is I want to go through and share a link to the membership page for our national organization. If you are currently a student or a business owner or part of a company or a nonprofit, our membership drive is currently ongoing, and you can get access to some really fantastic information and details. But I think most importantly, from that Nowbo National page, you can get fabulous information if you go under the Institute tab for educational programming that's occurring every single Tuesday at lunchtime, completely for free, because the national organization wants to support our women during the current pandemic. The second link that I'm sharing, and you might have found our event and seen Yuvina and Maria's photos earlier, is our event page for Facebook for Nowbo Orlando's events. Tomorrow morning, we actually have a coffee conversation with a former national Nowbo board member, as well as an Orlando president, Teresa Mears. We'll be talking about leadership and empathy at 10 a.m. It's a free event. And then next week, we have two events for those of you who are part of the full Women Who Win program. Our roundtable has Corksicle brand, which, talking about brand and collaborations, you might be familiar with the Corksicle brand from Oprah's Favorite Things. You might be familiar with the Corksicle brand. They just announced their Star Wars collaboration, as well as their college football collaborations just recently. We will have their marketing director joining us for the roundtable, as well as our 2019 established Propel Her Pitch winner, Apollo Performance, will be coming to join us on Wednesday night. And then on Thursday morning, October 22nd at 10 a.m., we are going to be learning more about big picture thinking for small businesses. So this is another segment on marketing as well. Pamela Rogan of Rogan Marketing. She is a former Nowbo Orlando president as well, and she is also a marketing guru, will be coming in and doing another coffee conversation. So I just want to thank everyone for their great participation this evening and for fabulous information that was shared. So thank you so much to our presenting sponsor, Bank of America, as always, for really powering our 2020 Women Who Win series. Thank you to Full Sail University and to our fantastic educators and topic experts, as always. We'll go ahead and reserve the recording as an archive, and we'll share the links if there are any future questions.